Alan Myers here. I am. This is another episode of For the Republic. Thanks for being here on. Wait a minute. Something. Mic is unhooked, or oh, his mic is unhooked. Okay, you can hear me, right, Brady?
Yes, I can.
Good. Okay. Anyway, here we go. We're gonna do, of course, some. We're gonna do some wackadoodle news. What
What
do you
a
think?
novel idea. What a novel idea.
Okay. Hey, let's be novel. Okay. All right. And we'll be waiting for Dougie. He's doing some business. This comes out of the University of California, Berkeley. Can you believe it? Berkeley does something? Well, apparently it's outrage. It's created some outrage because allegedly it banned white people from the community farm called Gill Track Farm on Saturdays. So yes, this now Gill Track Farm is in a partnership with UC Berkeley since 2013, and its goal is to, which is a good goal. Its goal is to, oh, here we go. Sorry. Its goal is to support urban farming, research, and food justice movement. Okay, I'm sorry. I'm slow. Apologize. What is food justice? That's a movement?
This goes back to one of my favorite things is there's either justice or injustice. Anytime you have to put an adverb in front of justice, it means injustice.
I just don't understand. I mean, urban farming research, fantastic. Food justice movement, what the HE double hockey sticks is that? Anyway, they have a recent policy and it's been criticized for discriminating based on race, even though the university apparently really wants inclusivity. Now, I understand inclusivity to be all inclusive. I do have to make this one comment. They're discriminating based on race. Now, I've said this before on the program. I will continue to say this on the program. For me, and just me, who am I? I don't know much. There's only one race, human. How can you discriminate based on we're all human? Different ethnicities, different origins, different all kinds of stuff. We're still the same race, human. How about we start acting like it? I'm just so tired of that stuff. Anyway,
I've actually personally experienced food injustice many times. I'd like to share a couple stories because it has haunted me through my whole life. When I was younger and we in grade school,
yeah.
they had the lunch lady would come by, and I got held a little bit late in class talking to the teacher, and they ran out of tater tots before I got to the in line, and that was absolute food injustice. Not long ago, I was at a pizza party and I got there a little bit late, and the pizza was all gone before I got there. Or actually, the good pizza was all gone. That was food injustice, and I definitely want some reparations.
That's what it means
That's the
to
closest.
you. To
Yeah,
you.
to me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you for sharing those really important nuggets. Get it? Nuggets. All right. We'll keep going. Uh, this controversial policy was to create, here we go, safe and sacred space. We're talking about farming and, restricting it from some people and not others on a Saturday. They UC Berkeley has also been connected with something called the Person of Color Theme House. And this was a co-op, and it was to help to create a safe space for marginalized students while still upholding the principles of inclusivity and non-discrimination. Is this whack?
Yeah, it's definitely wackadoodle. It's unfortunately it's not news because it's been going on for way too long.
So, um, It's kind of disappointing. I grew up when I was, back in the Stone Age when I was growing up. I heard about Berkeley, and I thought, wow, what a great, must be a great school. They really care about education. And now I've come to find out they care about indoctrination. Interesting. Very interesting. All right. Speaking of ethnic discrimination. Oh, yeah. We're now in New York City. Okay. And there's some ethnic discrimination going on. And this is going against New York City pizzerias and matzah makers. There's an assemblyman, and he's out of Staten Island, and he commented on this new law, which would cut smoky pollutants from wood or coal-fired ovens. This is what pizzerias and matzah makers make. Well, the assemblyman said his proposed law would exempt businesses, some of them legendary local establishments, from a controversial city green edict. Okay. He also went on to say these misguided laws go against businesses that cook ethnic cuisine. You have to pass a law to protect the sanctity of New York City pizzerias and matzah makers? Any thoughts?
Does this have to do with the emissions from the ovens that we read about a few weeks ago?
Yeah, because the ovens are wood or coal fired, and this is the tradition in that kind of cooking. Because now the other thing is they could install costly air filtration systems to dramatically slash the emissions from their traditional ovens. Now, this will cost $10,000 or more dollars. Who knows what it takes to maintain them? Have you heard anything about this?
I have. This is obviously such a major affront. It has made the rounds in my corners of news. And I'm actually a big fan of what they're trying to do, because you try to separate New Yorkers from their pizza, you're gonna get some pushback. And so keep pushing the envelope, guys, with this ridiculous nonsense. But I'm glad they're doing it, because New Yorkers are going to stand up for their pizza.
Interesting. Good. See, you want to know, what matters to people, and then you can show how it's affected. I mean, imagine if you could not buy pizza by the slice in New York. What would happen?
Armageddon.
There you go. Okay.
Pretty much. You can't just take away all, but a big part of New York's identity, and it is some of the best pizza in the world.
There you go. All right. This
hey,
one.
Real quick before you go on. Hey, Dynamex, I am going to talk about the Quakes. So you just hold your thunder there.
Oh, good. You're watching chat. Thank you.
Yeah.
This one is kind of wacky. I saw it and I figured, okay, I'll just briefly mention this. Hospitals must obtain, think about this for a minute. I'll say it and then we'll discuss it. Hospitals must obtain written informed consent. Wow, written informed consent from patients before subjecting them to a pelvic exam or exam of other sensitive areas, especially if the exam will be done while the patient is unconscious. This came from the federal government on Monday. Well, I'm happy about getting informed written consent. Yeah, if you're going to examine sensitive areas, especially if the person is unconscious. And I wish Dougie was here for this one, but Brady, where in the Constitution, where in Article 1, Section 8 is this?
It's not there.
Oh, okay. So once again, the federal government has weighed in on something. Oh, it has no business weighing in on. And I'll come back to that thought. This came from the Department of Health and Human Services. And if the hospitals do not obtain this explicit written informed consent, they may be ineligible for participation in Medicare or Medicaid programs. They may be subject to fines. They may be investigated for violating patient privacy laws. Apparently, at least 20 states have passed laws requiring a patient's consent. Anything else on this?
Well, we talked a bit about the abuses going on to the Nuremberg Code last week, and I got some really good feedback on that
Good.
segment last week, so we did a good job on that.
All right.
What I'm trying to figure out with this one is, what was the impetus for the HHS to actually weigh in and make a rule that makes sense? Because it seems like shouldn't you want to have to give consent before they can do anything to you? So
How about? Go ahead. I'm sorry.
So what was the abuse they were trying to stop from happening?
Apparently, somebody got examined, especially unconscious. But I'm thinking, why isn't this the hospital's policy? We're here to take care of you. We're here to help you. We're here to help you feel safe. Okay. So if we're going to do something to you, especially in what would be considered a private and or special area, we're going to get your consent so you're not surprised. This is a hospital thing. This is a patient thing. This is a patient-doctor thing, not the federal government thing. Once again, the federal government has found a great way to waste money. It's not their thing. All right. You ever heard of Princeton?
I have.
Okay. Well, things are starting to rock and roll there. A Princeton professor, conservative, okay, that you probably don't expect to hear, apparently makes members. See, they have a lot of campus social clubs, eateries, whatever, unique eating clubs. And in a way, it's kind of like a co-ed frat. Anyway, a social club, a eating club, apparently some people in that club didn't like that one of their members, a student, brought his professor to eat. And they didn't like it. He, the student, said that the school's unique eating club system is at danger of becoming ideological safe spaces for students. They didn't like it because this guy, this professor, is called conservative. And the eatery that we're talking about, Charter, that's the name of it, had changed its visitor policy in order to maintain an inclusive environment. Apparently, I don't understand inclusive. I guess that means exclude whoever you want. And Charter, the eatery, is a sanctuary for its members. And visitors who are not family members or friends would henceforth not be permitted to enter the club during its hours of food service operations without prior approval from undergraduate officers, club staff, and the Alumni Board of Governors. You want to go get a meal and you're going to have to contact all these people? Well, apparently the professor that came in was a Robert George, and they just don't want to be in the same room with him. Your thoughts?
None of that's remotely shocking. It's Ivy League. It's a modern day American university. We're starting to see some pushback of that. I saw a beautiful story over the weekend of, I guess there's like 28 or something like that, students at Vanderbilt University that barged into like a chancellor's office, refused to leave. They tried to call the police because somebody couldn't go to the bathroom. They said, you can go to the bathroom, just leave. They tried to file charges because somebody couldn't change their feminine hygiene. I'll just call it a tampon. That's what it was. long story short, Vanderbilt actually expelled four of these students, suspended at least another one, and the other some bunch of others got short-term suspensions. Uh, the one kid who's 19 years old uh, decided to go out on Twitter and talk about how he's been oppressed. He's been fighting for the rights of, I'm sorry, marginalized people for years. He's 19, Alan. He's been fighting for years. And Vanderbilt is the tuition is about $100,000 next year, so he's pretty marginalized. But I can almost guarantee that some Ivy League school, probably Harvard, is going to give this kid a scholarship by the fall. And that's the world we live in
So
because
wait a minute, they barged into an office. Why?
they wanted to have Vanderbilt University do some kind of what is it, the divestment from any ties with Israel, because apparently Vanderbilt's a big supporter of the Israeli government.
Oh,
It was a giant virtue signal, is what it was. But that being
is
said,
that, so that's what we call a peaceful protest. Okay. Uh,
yeah, we saw this coming. Well, when I was going to college in the 90s, we started seeing what was known as the politically correct movement. And I was on a UC campus, not as bad as Berkeley, but it was well on its way towards trying to keep up. And we saw a little bit about this stuff. I'll never forget the first class I ever took there. The professor spent the first hour and 40-minute lecture telling us how, it was a sociology professor, told us how he had put his wife into, he was married for 30 years, put his two kids through school, and then told his wife he'd been gay the whole time. My second college professor was the president of the campus Gay and Lesbian Society. It was an honors humanities writing course, and our first book was about Ovid, the Art of War, no, the Art of Love. Sorry, not the Art of War. That's Sun Tzu. And basically, that graphic pictures of men having sex with each other. So that was my indoctrination to the UC system. It's been going. I mean, the
wow.
trajectory was inevitable, and here we are. But the nice thing is, I think he's starting to see the pendulum swing back.
Which is good.
Yeah.
Apparently, this professor, if this is the one, Robert George, his presence in the eating hall was objected to by the progressive students. They were outraged by his relentless questioning of their left-wing ideological convictions. Don't question me, just believe as I say. Okie dokie.
Sounds pretty inclusive to me.
Yeah, if you agree with them, it's inclusive.
Well, that's the problem is they don't agree with diversity of thought. They want diversity of everything else. But to hear an idea that may not match their indoctrinated worldview, no, heaven forbid. I need a safe space.
But why should they accept anyone else's point of view that's different? I mean, they're correct and they know it. They don't need to have a discussion.
I seem to remember the point of college was to hear different views once upon a time.
Oh, that is so old school. That is, we're way beyond that because we know what's right now.
Have we talked much on this show, Alan, of how the colleges started to go that direction? Because there's a couple of seminal events that happened in the last century. I think it's worth bringing up if you'd like me to.
We'll write it down, and when we get through when
got
we
it right
get
here.
as I said, write it down, and when we get through wackadoodle, we'll talk about it. How's that?
Fair enough.
Okay. Let's see. I don't care about that one. Yeah. Let's see what else we got. Oh, this one is good. Oh yeah. We ever talk about EVs?
Aren't they like that's like aliens, right? No, no,
Yeah.
no.
Yeah.
Those are ETs. Oh yeah, we may have mentioned the fact. You mean talking about the things that blow up and don't work and don't have very much range that are being forced down our throats?
Yeah. Yeah.
Those. Okay, yeah. Go ahead.
New Jersey, of all places, has introduced annual EV fee. It's the highest in the nation and may affect people from buying them. And excuse me, one second. And the governor, Phil Murphy, signed into law a new EV road tax. Look who's coming in. Dougie's here.
Yeah. Still trying to figure out what I want to do for my background here.
Oh, that's a good one. That's pretty. We get to see your racks on the door. Love it.
And my books.
Yeah. Okay. Anyway, we're talking. I know this is going to come as a surprise to you. We're talking about EV. EV. There's an EV tax in New Jersey. It's brand new. Governor signed the law. It's going to be the beginning of it will be an annual $250 road tax fee. In 4 years, it will get to $290. And this is to help offset the state's loss in fuel tax revenue. However, when you buy a lease new car, EV car, you got to put up 4 years up front. So that's going to be $1,060 additional before you drive off the lot. What do you think? Ready?
Weren't they paying people to buy EVs just a really short time ago?
Well, now they're not.
It's interesting. The market's already spoken. We just saw Tesla came in well under their expectations for vehicle deliveries just last week. The rest of the industry is finding that the demand is not what they thought that they could legislate.
Are they having problems with delivery because they don't have enough people to deliver all the cars that people want?
Nope. It's actually a demand problem, not a supply.
Ooh. Oh, that's there. See, now we're in that supply and demand thing. It's, you can have all the supply you want, but if you don't have a demand, I guess you got a problem.
Well, especially when you stop subsidizing and start charging people. It's interesting what they say about the roads. I've heard some. We may have talked about this a bit on this show, but I've heard a lot of people chatting about how the electronic vehicles are heavier and they do more damage on the roads, and that's where this tax is coming from. I've heard some people try to argue the other side of that, but I don't know enough about the topic to really weigh in. But I think that's where that road tax comes in, is apparently they are causing more potholes than otherwise.
Well, part of it is that when you buy a gallon of fuel, other than the cost of the fuel and the sales tax, there's some other tax. And since these cars are not buying fuel, the owners are not paying that portion of the tax. The thing is that they may wear the roads more, but how many times? I mean, I'm glad Doug's here because constitutionally he can give us the authority on this and point me where in the Constitution I need to go to read. Because yes, I do have my pocket Constitution right here. Where is there the authority for the federal government to decide that if you buy a certain thing, we're going to play favorite with you and give you a tax credit? You buy an EV, you buy solar, we give you a tax credit. You don't, you're going to have to pay your fair share.
Alan, there's a chance that car may drive across interstate lines. It's interstate commerce. The federal government has full offers.
See, that's why I wanted Doug here.
Yeah, why don't you just drag your nails across a chalkboard while you're at it?
Oh, are you going to correct me, Doug? Was I wrong? Was I wrong in that statement?
Slightly.
Hang on, I got to get a drink of TP to prepare for this one.
Well, it's been a while since we've been on the air together, Doug. Good to see you, buddy.
Yeah. I just got back from out of state Friday. We drove in after driving all night, got home at 12, then turned around and left the house at 1:30 to go to Torrance to teach that class. All right. First of all, who is making this law that you're talking about regarding electric vehicles?
This one's New Jersey, but Alan was specifically asking, can the federal government subsidize?
Okay. So I don't know what New Jersey's state constitution looks like on this.
No,
I'm going to guess because most states are pretty lenient on certain when it comes to transportation. and laws regarding transportation, that from a state constitutional point of view, New Jersey can do this. Now, that said, we'll get to the federal thing in a minute. What it reeks of is this funny little thing that we like to call mercantilism. Ultimately, what it is playing favorites. We want this merchant to do better, and we fear that these merchants or this attitude or this industry might interfere. So we're going to give credit here, or we give taxes here. That's what they did originally when it came to, by the way, the subsidies. Now that it's backfiring and they're realizing they need to twist it around, now suddenly this merchant that was favored is not. And once again, it is being treated in a manner that's not uniform with the treatment of other businesses. Mercantilism largely is not treating businesses equally under the law and giving certain businesses advantages or disadvantages, or even passing laws disallowing certain merchants to even operate, which is what this eventual ban of gasoline-powered cars really is. So first of all, let me say that. Now, as for the federal, I'm sorry, go ahead.
One thing is that this is a tax not on a business. This is a tax on
an industry.
No, on a would-be owner. The owner is going to have to pay extra registration.
Yeah, but it's a tax on the industry because it's for a specific product.
Because
the owner's paying it, but it's on a particular industry.
Right. Because they're not paying the gas tax. So I don't have a problem. I personally don't have a problem.
Now, what's funny about that is this. So these are the same people who are trying to get everybody to get into an EV.
Not this
They want to
governor.
push EVs.
Right.
We want everybody to abandon their gasoline-powered cars. Now, when you begin to tax something, what type of, I don't know, use of that particular product, what happens to the usage of that product once a tax goes up on it? Or the action?
Depends on how heavy the tax is.
Typically, you get less of it. Raising a tax on something tends to drop the activity or product purchase or whatever it is. So if you want to, the best way to reduce something is increase the taxes on it. That's why they've got taxes so high on cigarettes. They want to reduce cigarette smoking. They want to reduce that behavior. So if you're trying to push EVs, your goal is to increase number of EVs on the road. Isn't it counterintuitive to tax them like that? Or, I mean, at least wait until you kick everybody out of their gas-powered vehicles before you spring the, Jack in a Box at, well, by the way, you got to pay more actually in the long run. So for the sake of the argument for EVs, those who support EVs, actually it's a little too soon. But why is it too soon? Because the cost is so prohibitive, they can't wait any longer.
Well, we've talked previously about how the cost to EV is going through the roof. The cost to repair them has gone through the roof.
Yeah.
All that sort of thing. It's at the end of the day, the government needs to keep its dirty fingers off the scales of the economy and let the market decide. Now, what's interesting is we haven't talked about how ridiculous it is to have a gas tax to start with. Because that's where I want to start at. Why do you have a gas tax?
Because we're going to use all the money we take out of your pocket when you fill up your tank, and we're going to fix our roads.
Yeah, but then look at the real reason, not what they tell you, but what the real reason is. What's the real reason?
Fund government.
Once again, it goes back to what I told you earlier. What's going to happen to the behavior if you begin to tax it? You get less of the behavior.
They've been taxing this for a long time.
So if they start taxing gas higher, guess what? The mindset from their point of view is we'll get less travel. We don't want people traveling. That's way too much freedom. It's bad enough we were having trouble keeping them in their 15-minute cities. We'll tax them out of traveling. That's what we'll do.
The thing is, most people may not be aware that when you buy a gallon of gas at the pump and you're paying X amount for it, there's the gas, there's the sales tax, and then there's the road tax. And most people don't know that it's in there.
And in California also, the cost changes also be depending on which blend is being used, depending
Right.
on the time of year also.
Exactly.
Yeah, I was up in Oregon. And by the way, they did away with the law that a few months ago that required that you couldn't pump your own gas. So now I had to get out of my car and pump my gas.
Oh,
But
that is so
anyway,
sad. That is so sad.
Gas up there is about $4.30 a gallon.
Thank
For the
you,
most part, for
California.
those of you around the country, for me, that's cheap because California is like anywhere from $5.15 to $5.80 a gallon, depending on which gas station you go to.
And how
I
close to the
remember when I was
freeway
in
you are.
Arkansas last year, I didn't pay more than $2.49 a gallon.
Yeah, Doug, I paid $3.19 the other day here in New Hampshire, and somehow
You suck.
our roads are actually repaired. Somehow. I don't know how they.
And you have winters.
Absolutely.
Because it has nothing to do with fixing the roads. It's all about your behavior.
All right, let's move on. We got some.
See, I show up and I cause all kinds of trouble.
You may not. This may be new to you. I hope you both are sitting down.
Okay.
We may have a national debt drama that is deepening. Oh no. According to this article, U.S. government debt is reaching unsustainable levels. Reaching? You mean getting to 34 trillion wasn't unsustainable? Anyway, there's a investor group, Citadel. The founder, Ken Griffin, referred to the mounting national debt as a significant issue, saying that we must stop borrowing at the expense of future generations. According to a recent survey, about 85% of Americans worry that the current debt levels could have a negative impact in their future. There's 15% who don't? That's crazy. The debt is equal, this is according to the St. Louis Fed, equal to about 121% of the country's GDP as of last quarter of 2023. They keep talking about debt equaling to the GDP a little bit greater. Why don't they just talk about that it's unpayable? Why don't they talk about what is the magnitude, as I do? It's just 1 trillion. Forget the 34. Let's see. And apparently,
you talked about the same Ken Griffin who donated over $100 million to Republican coffers in 2022 midterms, most of which I should say, are the ones that he donated to are from the major oil producing states like Alaska, Texas, and Louisiana.
Could be.
That would be the same Ken Griffin.
Okay. And apparently the national debt is increasing by an average of only $8.5 billion a day. What could go wrong? Any thoughts?
Donald Trump.
Why don't you go first, Brady, because this might be long for me.
Okay. Yeah, the numbers I just saw is with interest rates, if they were to stay the same for the next 12 months, if Donald Trump were to win,
don't hold your breath on that.
He's going to, well, get there. He would inherit an economy that's doing 1.2 trillion just in interest rates, that at the end of the 4 years, assuming interest rates stay the same, would actually grow to $2.9 trillion just in interest in 4 years. The government took in record revenues of about 4.6 trillion last fiscal year. That means we have $1.7 trillion of spending for the Congress. And I believe it's something like almost twice that is already written into law as mandatory spending. That's before Congress gets to start passing out anything else. So in other words, we've got a bit of an issue going on. The numbers don't work.
Just one point of clarification, you referred to it as revenue. Taxation for me is not profit making, it's profit taking. So it's not revenue. It's funding, but definitely not revenue. People who work earn revenue. Governments just take.
Point stipulated. Thank you, Alan.
Thank you. Dougie.
Okay,
All right, Doug's done.
Alexander Hamilton
Who?
believed that a national debt was necessary. He believed that it did two things. One, it created a credit rating, a good credit rating for a country. And B, it would hold together the Union. States would be less likely to secede if they were part of the debt. He believed not only that we should have a perpetual debt, but that even the average lifestyle worked best when operating based on lending, loans, borrowing money. He was John Maynard Keynes before John Maynard Keynes was even born, more than 100 years before Keynes was born. If you don't know who John Maynard Keynes was, this is the father of the Keynesian economic theory, which is basically socialist at its foundation and believes that economies are driven by consumerism and debt, and that the best way to fix an economy is to borrow more money and then pump the money into the system so that consumerism can kick in a gear, even though the products may not be manufactured in the first place. Now, when Alexander Hamilton and the founding fathers first got the Constitution into operation in 1789, part of Alexander Hamilton's plan, and it is in the Constitution that they would do this, unfortunately, is Congress transferred all of the state debt to the federal government in 1790. By doing that, number one, it gave the federal government a certain allowance of control over the states. And secondly, it created a federal debt of about $75 million, which people thought was unbelievably high.
Huge.
75 million.
Yep.
Hamilton and the Federalist Party were in no rush to pay off the debt. They believed debt was a good thing. And by the end of the John Adams administration, 1800, it was at about $83 million. That large national debt of 83 million was among many of the reasons that John Adams did not serve a second term. During Thomas Jefferson's tenure as president, after Adams, president number 3, Jefferson reduced the debt every year of his 8 years in office, except for the 1 year in which he had to deal with the Barbary War, the Barbary pirates. He reduced the debt during his presidency from 83 million in 1801 to 57 million in 1809. And that's pretty impressive when you consider not only the Barbary War, but also the fact that 13 million was added to 15 million was the price, but 13 million was debt that was added from the Louisiana Purchase. So now, here's why I bring that up. Jefferson's attitude was that future generations should not have to pay for the past generation. He also believed that direct taxation, as was in the Constitution, was wrong. What Jefferson believed is you grow the economy through manufacturing. And so what Jefferson did in his presidency is for the first 2 years of his first term, he cut pretty much all of the taxes, federal taxes. And after he cut the taxes, you know what happened? Federal, are you sitting down, Alan?
I'm sitting
Federal
down.
revenues soared to nearly 17 million by the end of his presidency, largely due to an increase on import duties and a boom in manufacturing. You know, that von Mises Austrian economic theory thing, supply side, it worked under Jefferson. Jefferson, by the way, is one of my favorites of the guys from back then. So what is the basic lesson? You spend less, you reduce the debt in that manner, and you make government smaller, and the economy booms, and the national debt drops. Unfortunately, we have a bunch of leftists out there. Notice I said leftists, not Democrats, because the leftists are in both parties, who believe that this Leviathan that we have as our federal government can spend endlessly. There's money to burn. Don't worry, we'll just print more money. So I've been making Alan squirm half of this anyway.
No.
But that's the attitude. And until this Leviathan is cut down to size, this is going to continue. And it's gotten to the point where, because I'm looking at selling my house here in Southern California, and I can't afford to do the fixes that is necessary to sell it. Why? Because, see, my house appeals to the older crowd because of it doesn't have an open floor plan. It has popcorn on the ceiling, things like that. The younger crowd isn't looking for that. I won't be able to sell my house if I don't do about $50,000 worth of work in this house to like knock out a wall and make it more open and blah, 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 blah. But the problem with the younger crowd is, even though they're the ones buying in this area because all the old people are leaving the freaking state, is a lot of them can't afford a house. Most of that generation is not even sure they'll ever be able to afford one in their lifetime. What's going to happen? Because, see, what's happening right now with this debt and with this economy and with this inflation, a friend of mine was saying this to me earlier today. It's a kidney punch and another kidney punch and another. How many kidney punches is it going to take before the younger generation says, okay, we're sick of this crap. Let's go with what the older folks say we should do. Reduce taxes, increase manufacturing, reduce regulations, and get the federal government the hell out of all of our lives. I fear that the kidney punches will have to keep happening until we slam our faces on the floor of the ring before we're finally willing to get up and go, okay, I'm done with this crap. Let's change it. Unfortunately, I think that's what's going to happen.
Since we believe a picture is worth 1,000 words, I'll just share what the actual deficit looks like over the last 20 years. And this major spike down is COVID spending, so don't blame that on anything. But when Biden says he cut the deficit, well, he did, because it was COVID spending ended. He came in and actually had what would have been a record deficit in any other generation, any other administration, and now he's breaking his record each year with a deficit. So we were actually fiscally responsible to some degree when it came to the deficit, with a lot of accounting shenanigans up until basically the mid-'70s. And we know what happened then. Went off the gold standard, and then we had stagflation. We had this little thing up right there. Don't believe we actually went positive, because all they did was that was Bill Clinton robbing from the Social Security fund so he could claim a surplus in 1 year. That's not actually what happened. But these are the official numbers from the Office of Management and Budget. But these are scary numbers, because you just can't earn your way out of it, as Alan points out. This debt can only be, the only thing you can do to a deficit that has created a debt to this degree is you have to pay it down. It can't be earned. You don't have any investment that can outgrow it. This is not a corporation. This is not an individual. This is a problem, and it is inevitable what is going to happen.
Can I make a comment?
Yep.
Okay, keep in mind, this is a graph of federal surplus or deficit. As in, surplus would be more came in than was spent. Deficit is more went out than was received. This is different than the fact that the national debt has increased year after year. Even during Clinton's time, the national debt went up every year since 1958. So when Clinton was claiming, oh, look, we got a surplus, this is number juggling. The debt still increased. If you had a true surplus, that meant more came in than you spent or borrowed, then the debt went down. Didn't happen.
The chat room says Weimar 2.0. Weimerica Republic. The Weimerica Republic. That's pretty good, iPoke champ. As for my house, Rovi 3 says, sell your house to squatters affiliated with the cartel. They have money.
Yeah, but they don't pay. They just squat.
Well, here's the thing. Real quick, just to tell you what's going on with my house. So I had an investor look at it today. The investor is willing to give me $80,000 less than I could sell it for if I spent $50,000 on it and paid $20,000 in real estate fees. So in the long run, without having to go through all the hassle, I only lose about $10,000 if I give it as is to this investor.
All right.
That's almost hilarious. What's even funnier is I have another investor coming in later on this week, and I would love to get them into a bidding war and actually jack it up so that my net is higher than if I actually put the money into it and sold it in an orthodox manner. But anyway,
they probably wouldn't do that. But anyway, so
never know.
Thanks for sharing that, Brady.
I just think it's hilarious. It is actually cheaper. It is almost as good for me just to sell it as is to some investor
who's going to improve the property,
who's going to put the money in, but he's got the resources I don't have. See,
right?
Yeah. But
all right,
anyway.
We'll continue on. This is in the EV realm.
EV realm still?
Well, no, we bounce back and forth.
Right.
There is an actress and environmentalist named Tracy Ward. I think this is out of the UK. And she objects to plans to build a 2,000-acre solar farm, part of which would lie on the estate of her ex-husband, the Duke of Beaufort in Gloucestershire. She's okay with solar panels on roofs, along motorways, industrial sites, but she says, be careful what the climate change fear-mongering will lull us into accepting. She doesn't want all these solar panels on farmland. Somebody might say, well, you can have solar energy, fans or panels, and then the sheep can graze underneath the panels. No, they can't, because the sunlight didn't get through, so there's no grass grow. It's nice that people are speaking out. One study said that it is not even clear that the energy generated by a typical solar farm in Europe, north of the Alps, that the energy generated is greater than what went into building it, let alone replacing it every 15 years. So you spend X, and then this creates X. So there's no, excuse me, so there's no net benefit. What else? Especially in places like the UK, you have a vast difference between summer and winter as far as how much sunlight they get, how long it lasts, and that even when you talk about a solar farm, solar panels are about a quarter of the total cost. You have the rest of the cost is the infrastructure and the land, and that's getting more and more expensive. So the people want to put up more and more panels, but the cost and what it can produce is not beneficial. Any thoughts, Doug?
It's funny because what people don't talk about is what goes into the manufacturing of things like solar panels and windmills, or all of the concrete that's used to get this set up. Concrete, by the way, is not good for the environment. And so I kind of find it hilarious because I think we're going to see it happen more often, that people that would normally be in favor of some environmental something are starting to recognize, maybe that's not good for the environment after all. Maybe this climate change hysteria is pushing us a little too far into a wacky doodle direction. And I think we're going to see more of this. And we have been seeing it here and there. My favorite is when people start getting into the windmills and what goes into making them and planting them in the dirt. And then what the reaction to the environment around them is afterwards.
Not only is there a tremendous use of materials, whether it's solar panels or
There's also
wind
tremendous use of quote unquote fossil fuels to create a lot of that.
You got to dig it, you got to transport it, you got to manufacture it, you got to transport it, you got to install it. Where do a lot of the things that are in a solar panel come from? China, our political mortal enemy. Solar panels and turbines have limited lives, 10, 20 years maybe. Okay, well, the panels, they've got a lot of toxic materials in them. They need to be recycled. How much energy is going to be used to do that? Have you ever seen how absolutely massive a wind turbine blade is? I mean, it's hundreds of feet long.
Extra wide load on the freeway when they're transporting it in pieces.
Yeah. And then you got, and we're green. We care about planet, and this is renewable. Oh, we don't care if we kill birds with them.
Yeah, explain that to all of the dead bald eagles.
Right. So, anyway, it's good that people are speaking out, and it would be nice to have a really one-time get-together. Everybody who knows the green stuff and wants it, one side of the stage. Everybody is opposed on the other. And we have a conversation. And I would say the people who don't want it get to start asking the questions. What's the truth? What is the full cost? Materials, energy, just to get one of these things up, or a solar panel farm? How much energy are we going to get out of it? And how much energy is going to be used to dismantle and detox the thing? So where is our plus?
Well,
and the dependability depends on the natural environment.
Yes.
No sun, no power. No wind.
Wait a minute.
And guess what time everybody comes home from work to plug in their electric vehicles, turn on their vacuum cleaners, turn on the washing machine, turn on their electric stoves, and live in the evening because they just got home from work about the time the sun goes down and the wind dies down. Yeah, no problem there.
Wait a minute. Solar panels need the sun?
Yeah, that's
you guys are being really, really short-sighted here, worrying about these costs when there's so many benefits. I mean, and we'll get to this later, but we could stop the earthquakes if we do this stuff. And I'll talk about that later. But more importantly,
Brady, I have to ask. Are you inhaling some fumes in your new home?
No, I've got articles to back up what I have to say.
Okay. Good.
Just roll with me. I'll get to there. But look at all the jobs you could be creating with all these solar things, because it's good to create jobs, except for the fact that the average renewable energy job is being subsidized by 250,000 pounds each, which is about $300,000 recently in the UK. So these are the jobs you're creating that you actually have to pay for. And this is above and beyond what these people actually get paid. So you guys are being very short-sighted. Think about all the people you just employed, or you're trying to make unemployed by your common sense energy ideas there. You need to open up your minds a little.
No. I really appreciate this added information to our discussion, Brady. It really helped. So tell me, where does the 250,000 pounds come from?
The magic pound fairy, I think.
Oh, okay, good. So it's just there, and it's a matter of just sharing it.
Well, we're going to be so much more efficient with our solar panels that require sun, and our wind that will all be so much more wealthy. That'll be a drop in the bucket, and it won't become a national debt because we know that's not a problem whatsoever.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
For the earthquake reference, for those of you who've been living under a rock, Christina Amira Khalil, candidate for office.
Doug, let me cut you off. This is part of my fun thing to share.
Okay, go ahead.
I'll do that when we're done with the wackadoodle, but I'm bringing that to the.
Yeah.
So you don't want me to read what she said?
No, he's going to.
I've got it up on screen, ready to go.
Yeah.
Don't jump the gun.
Okay. But there's your teaser, folks.
The last thing on this topic, there is probably, according to this article, there's probably not enough silicone silver, or copper being mined and smelted in the world to build a solar farm big enough to supply Britain. The material demands of solar power are about 6 times greater than for gas per megawatt of capacity. Just saying.
Well, I disagree on part of that. There's plenty of silicone, but it's in Hollywood right now. But there is plenty of silicone available.
You can't mine that silicone.
You can't
okay?
mine that silicone.
You
Well, there's
cannot
that.
mine. No, well, you could, but you'd need informed consent.
I say, you sure as hell could try.
Okay. This one, it's part of its whack in that you even have to do this. And what brought this to mind is a while ago, I met a woman. Her name is Sharon Jessup. She is out of South Africa and a speaker. Met her here in San Diego. She's an adventurer, ultra endurance athlete. She runs out where animals live. She's a wildlife warrior, conservative, conservationist, storyteller. And she is sometimes referred to as the Rhino Lady. So look her up. Sharon Jessup, Jessop, Rhino Lady, South Africa. Well, South Africa is finally doing something, and I'm speaking of the country. I didn't even know this existed, excuse me, but they finally are beginning to plan to phase out captive breeding of lions for hunting purposes. I'm slightly disgusted just having to say that. You breed these beautiful animals just so you can shoot them, and so someone can have a head on their wall. I'm glad that this hopefully will be coming to an end. There are some countries that ban the import of trophies, which is great. Somewhere between 8,000 and 12,000 lions are kept on 350 farms across South Africa. It's horrendous. There's only about 3,500 in the wild. Your thoughts?
When you said Rhino Lady, I was confused. I thought you were going to talk about Senator Susan Collins from Maine, or Senator Murkowski from Alaska. Those are the two Rhino Ladies I know of.
No. I'm talking rhinoceroses.
Oh, okay.
She is an absolute protector of those fantastic, beautiful animals. And so check her out, give her a comment. You'll find her on the web. Any thoughts about this breeding program?
I don't know what to say about it. I don't know enough information, but I will say this. There is this idea out there, this narrative that if you're not one thing, then you must be the exact opposite. So if you're not a conservationist, then you must want to destroy the environment. If you don't love a particular group, you must hate them, and so on and so forth. And I am not a conservationist. I am not a environmentalist. But if there's gunk in the air, clean it up. If there's gunk in the water, clean it up. Do things that are common sense that isn't going to muck it all up. I'm totally good with that. And I do believe in climate change. I just don't believe that man has anything to do with it.
It's called weather.
Yeah. So rather than trying to change the weather, we need to adjust to the weather because it happens naturally. Hey, man, it gets warmer. Let's open up some farmland. It gets colder. Buy some coats. But whatever it is, I don't believe that we are destroying the planet. I don't think the planet Earth is that fragile. And we also have this funny thing called history. History is a big deal to me. And historically, the planet has warmed and cooled. In the time of Jesus, it was much warmer all over the planet than it is now today. During the Ice Age or during the Little Ice Age, during the time when the Delaware froze and Washington had to cross it and break up the ice to get across it. It was globally cooler than it is now. This is a fact. And I'm not going to get into all of the scientific, what carbon, the percentages and all that. Just the fact that historically, there has been natural phenomenon of warming and cooling is all I need to know. Once again, I am not saying be foolish when it comes to our environment. Hey, I'm a hunter. I want it to stay green and let there be lots of wildlife out there so I can shoot them every once in a while. I'm a golfer. I love it when it's green and sweet and nice. I want a good environment. But I don't believe that we need to go all crazy out of our head, bending over backwards and destroying economies and the weather systems because we think we had something to do with it. Now that's kind of my attitude. So, hey, if she can pull off what she's going to pull off, great. I would love to see more animals surviving and populations rising of certain critters and all that jazz. I have no problem with that. I'm not a complete cold right-wing crazy. I love the environment. I love to shoot animals in that environment. Or as I like to say, I love animals right next to my mashed potatoes. All right. Brady, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Doug. Both the topics that are on the table with this. It's a beautiful example of how two things can be true at the same time. Some of the chat said climate change is a freaking hoax. No, climate change is not a freaking hoax. The climate alarmism is the hoax. That's that mankind is doing so much damage that we have to change our entire way of life and create a one world government and destroy our economies. That's the hoax. But no, the bottom line is see more CO2 in the environment. Eventually, we'll have some heating effect. Eventually, it's just not going to happen in our lifetimes, and it's certainly not catastrophic. That's the hoax. When it comes to the hunting of the lions, what's interesting is that a lot of the people on those farms are actually doing it to preserve the lions as a species because mankind's encroachment on their natural environment has made it very difficult. We've chased out all their natural game. So to have these preserves, it actually does allow us to make sure that we do have a healthy lion population.
Absolutely.
The same. So to say this is just an absolute evil is, that's a black-white approach. All of us know some very responsible hunters. We hunt game in North America all the time to keep the populations in check. They have limits. It's done scientifically. And most of these hunters are very humane about how they hunt, and they don't take more than they're supposed to. There's always going to be people that break the rules. Sure. But this is not a black and white situation in either conversation. And I think it gets framed that way all the time because it's being used as a political wedge instead of having an adult conversation. And that's what these enviro-Nazis do, these eco-Nazis, is they try to, prey on your emotions and say, if you don't agree with us, you're the big bag polluters. And that's definitely not the case.
Yeah, and you're right. We want to protect these environment. We want to protect the populations of animals. I get that, and most hunters are very conscious of what the numbers are and all of that. And we have some of the rules that we have in this country, especially for reasons. But anyway, continue. I'm sorry.
No, that's pretty much that was what I want to say. Is just two things can be true. This is not a black and white issue, and anybody who takes an extreme stance on any of these conversations, it's probably, not going to be the one you want to listen to.
Well, with the rhinos, they're not being hunted because somebody wants rhino meat. They're being killed by poachers who only take their horn because in Eastern medicine, it's supposed to be a good additive. So these animals are being killed for their horns. And
don't get me started on shark finning because that's got to be some of the worst stuff done to any creature in the world. Because a bunch of people in China have small penises. They got to they got to massacre sharks all over the world.
Right. So the rhino thing is they're not supposed to be hunted, and they're being killed by poachers. Same what's been done to elephants. I understand hunting, but I didn't get into it in the story, but these lions that are being kept on these farms, are not being kept to be extremely healthy. They're just being kept. So it's, and to me, this is these topics, the rhino, the lion, this is not connected to, and you know my position on climate and my basic climate education, that what's being talked about is absolutely de minimis in the whole picture of our climate. CO2 at 420 parts per million, methane at 1.9 parts per million. Really? 99.93% of our entire atmosphere is three gases: nitrogen, oxygen, and argon. So our whole climate is pivoting on something less than 0.07%? No. The climate thing is to guide us into something that will be disastrous for it, which is a fully electric. All right.
Someone in the chat room mentioned the magnetosphere, and it's dwindling. That's a fact. You might want to research that. Well, Remnant, actually, I have. And here's the thing about the magnetosphere. It's sort of like the ozone layer. You know what we've learned about it through science? It's just like climate change. It naturally dwindles and then expands. It's a natural phenomenon. Once again, we didn't do anything to create the problem. The problem happens through time. It is a natural phenomenon. And I don't care how godly some people think humanity is in their capabilities of whatever it is that we're supposed to be able to do. When it comes to natural phenomenon, our best bet is to ride with it, because there's nothing we can do about it, and it's natural. It's what the planet does.
Last thing on this, for me, from my education and study, the three biggest things that affect our weather on this planet are the sun. Do we have any control over the sun? Oh, no. Mama Earth's tilt and wobble, tilt being on her axis, wobble, pathway around the sun. Do we have any control on that? No. And then there's what I call the heat reflection factor. That's when volcanoes blow. And one of the most massive ones that got documented was in 1815, thank you, Mount Tambora in Indonesia. It was so massive, it put so much sulfur dioxide in the stratosphere that 1816 became known as the year without a summer. You've got sun, earth, and volcanoes. Those are the most massive things that affect our weather on this planet. We humans have nothing to do with it. And why this is not out there in the mainstream talking points is really disappointing. All right, move on.
Alan, let me just add the fourth, because I don't think people talk about it enough. And that's cosmic rays, which are flowing through every single one of us right this minute. But they're cosmic rays in our atmosphere, which ebb and flow, are what determines the amount of cloud cover we have. And that impacts our temperature far more than any greenhouse gas ever will. And that needs to be brought up way more often. And I don't think people talk about the cosmic ray factor. So that's a fourth one for you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
We have no control over whatsoever.
Are you sure? Isn't there a dial at NASA that we can turn?
I don't have any cosmic ray block lotion to put on.
Okay. Well, we probably need some kind of electrical solar shield to block them out. Okay.
Yeah, I thought cosmic rays were just some guy named Ray that likes to go to sci-fi movies. But anyway, go ahead.
I thought it was a heavy metal band.
There you go.
Okay.
You slay me.
No shit. I didn't say it. All right. This is out of Nebraska. Just really quick, and I'm going to make a couple of comments. It's a bill out of Nebraska, and it wants to bar transgender athletes from competing on school sport teams that match their quote-unquote gender identity, and that this bill is now being considered constitutional by the state's Republican Attorney General.
What was the basis of it again?
Well,
you got to play sports with your sex, biological sex.
Okay.
Right. And the Nebraska Attorney General is Mike Hilgers. And this is the one thing I wanted to comment on. The bill, Legislative Bill 575, known as the Sports and Spaces Act. Oh, maybe they're talking about cosmic rays. I don't know. This would prevent transgender students from using public school restrooms or locker rooms consistent with their gender identities. And it would require schools to designate participation in athletics based on, this is, I don't like this, sex assigned at birth. Okay, can we get real? Sex is not assigned at birth. It is determined at the moment of conception. It is just confirmed at birth. It's not assigned. I quit using these words. It's disgusting. Anyway, and you have people on all sides of this, and it keeps coming up. But to me, it is known. It is kind of factual. It's not a guess. When a male body goes through puberty compared to a female body that goes through puberty, the male body will have more muscle, bigger bones, larger heart capacity, larger lung capacity. And you're saying that it's okay for that body because now it says it's a gal to compete against females, girls or women? This is crazy. And it's going to get really crazy when somebody, and I don't wish this on anyone, I do not, somebody famous, somebody whatever, and their daughter's out there and she gets racked. Okay? No, I wouldn't want this. And if you're born a guy and you think you're a gal, then we're going to create a whole new league for you. Okay? And again, I'm not making fun, I'm not poking fun, but it's known. We have a group called Special Olympics. There's a reason why they don't compete with the regular kids. Now, can I identify as special and start competing against them? No. Then there's the other group, Paralympics. They compete on their own. So, anyway, that's my thoughts on that. Any comments, gentlemen?
I think the same should be true for restrooms. You have your men, you have your women, and then you have a question mark restroom. You know, instead of trying to merge everything and forcing people to put up with their world, let them have their world.
Exactly. Brady?
Well, just reacting to what Doug just said, one of the interesting things about being here in New Hampshire is I don't see transgender bathrooms like I saw everywhere in California. It's kind of nice.
The hell you say?
Yeah, I don't remember the last time I saw one that had the shape of a female and the male little sign on there. It's either or most of the time. And I was assigned as a hamster at birth, and I don't regret the language.
Well, does that mean that we are now, as a hamster, are you an endangered species, and does society need to pay it to keep you safe?
Oh, I want my reparations.
Okay. Because, yeah, I know hamsters have been badmouthed for a long time.
Well, hamsters.
We've been caged.
Hamsters need to play hamster ball. If you have a swinging pickle, play pickleball with other swinging pickles.
There you go.
Wow. I got that. I like that double entendre.
I only got two more. I know this has been a lot today. We've talked about the. I want
to get to my earthquakes.
We're going to get to it. I can't wait.
Yeah, I'm all excited about this because this is I have purposely not talked about this or written about it because it's literally so stupid that even lefties are scratching their heads on this one. But I can't wait to see what Brady's got for us.
All right, two more. I know you're going to find this amazing, surprising, but yes, a U.S. debt bomb spirals towards 35 trillion. And people are actually now beginning to speak out about it. You couldn't speak out about it when it was 20 trillion. Come on. And yes, we're talking about hedge fund billionaire Ken Griffin. He thinks the national debt is a growing concern. We must stop borrowing at the expense of future generations. And another hedge fund manager, Paul Tudor, Jones warned that the debt bomb is on the verge of exploding in the U.S. And the Congressional Budget Office predicts they will be on the second largest government expenditure by the end of the year. Second only to Social Security. So any quick thoughts on debt one more time?
Well, I just wrote an article about Donald Trump and how almost all of the charges against him have been conspiracy charges. You know what conspiracy means? You said something.
Do this, save that. After Brady does his thing, we're going to do conspiracy.
Well, no, the reason why is because what you were just talking about.
Yeah.
It ties into that real quick. So the problem is those people who are speaking out against the debt, those people who are saying that the government doesn't know what it's doing about our economy.
Like me.
Yeah, well, then you need to be charged with conspiracy of creating mistrust of government handling of the economy. That's what they've been doing to Trump. So
I guess it's only a matter of time.
Alan, to your point that why were they not alarmed at 20 trillion?
Yeah.
It was 34. You know how much, you guys may have noticed I kind of like my charts.
You love charts.
I'm going to do a quick little exercise for you.
Okay.
And right here, we've got from the St. Louis Federal Reserve, the graph of the federal total public debt history. So it took us almost 200 years of our history to get to our first $1 trillion of national
That was
debt.
1981.
Very good. So till we got to 2 trillion, we broke through that 5 years later. So the first $1 trillion, it took us almost 200 years to get to. And our next trillion took 5 years. The next trillion was another 5 years. During the Reagan years, we didn't grow as fast to get to 3 trillion. We got to 4 trillion 3 years after that. When did it double? To 8 trillion, got us to 2005. So it took us another 20 years. But to get from 8 trillion to 10 trillion was another just under 3 years. And from 10 trillion to 20 trillion was about 7 years. And then from 20 trillion to 34 trillion was just another 7 years. So you notice it's going, we call this a hyperbolic arch. And these are not sustainable in mathematics.
Well, it's feeding on itself, isn't it? I mean, once you start getting to those levels, it's like computers, double, 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 and then numbers get astronomical once you get to those higher numbers.
Let me really blow your mind on that, where it would be basically from 2009 through 2022, we had effectively a zero interest rate policy. So the government was able to refinance itself at under the rate of inflation. Otherwise, that number would be about double where it is if we had historical average interest rates of around 5%. Right now, when a 30-year Treasury bond that was issued in 1994, at like 5 or 6%, well, now they're having to renew it at the same rate. But their shorter term notes, anything that's 10 years or less, that was issued at 1%, which most of the debt was of the short term, when it has to roll over because it's not getting paid back at 5%, you've quintupled that section of the debt curve. So this parabolic arch is going to continue to get way, way worse just from simple mathematics, even if Congress were to have a balanced budget.
Before you click out, I want to make a comment.
Feel free, I'm done.
Okay. Look at the numbers on the left under Fred. At the top, it's 30 million. Yeah, okay. 35, 32. Okay. Those are millions. And look at what's on the left of that. This is in millions of dollars. So when it says 12 million, what it's really saying is 12 trillion.
Right.
They don't want to write that number with 6 more zeros.
Not enough room.
No, they can make the room. They just don't want you to see what a trillion looks like. So this whole graph is based on representing information in millions of dollars. not ones or tens or hundreds, millions of dollars. That number sequence to me is very, very misleading. Look at the number at the top. It says 34,001,494. Okay. So if you look at that real quick, you're going to go, oh, 34 million, not a big deal. What you're not adding is the other 6 zeros at the end of 4. So I just wanted to mention that. Thank you, Brady.
Very good.
All right, last thing, because we've talked about this, be brief. There is somebody out there, and this person is a Nobel Prize winner, and apparently he does not agree there's a climate crisis. His name is John Clauser. He won a Nobel Prize he's a Nobel Prize winning physicist, and he was at a group. And the upshot is that he said there's no climate crisis. Let me see. And he was not the only speaker at the conference. He's 80 years old. He won a Nobel Prize in 2022 for studies on light particles. But other people will still, and other people, also physicists, will say global warming suits the Earth just fine. Think about it. How do you do? Do you do better when it's warm, pleasant, or when it's cold? Warm, pleasant. How about plants? The things that we eat, or the things that we eat that like to eat them? Do they like a lot of plants and trees? Birds like trees, don't they? Well, they do better. How many trees grow in the Arctic? Help me out, Doug.
I really would say I believe it's a goose egg.
Okay, and you're not.
Well, there's a reason everybody came to Southern California. The weather.
Yeah.
And it only took a bunch of lefties to get people to leave.
And isn't part of California considered, quote unquote, a food basket?
Well, until they cut the water off.
Yeah, but before that, because it was
the breadbasket of the world.
You had good soil, good water, good temp. It wasn't cold. It wasn't chilly. How come you don't have a food basket region like that in the Arctic or the Antarctic? Because stuff doesn't grow when it's really cold. And if CO2 is really bad, I'm done with this one. If CO2 is really bad, and we've talked about this before, what's the CO2 concentration in a greenhouse, commercial greenhouse? It's 1,200 parts per million, almost 3 times what it's outside. Why? Because plants grow faster, better, stronger with more CO2.
So what happens if they start reducing the carbon?
Yeah, see, you had to use that word, right? You couldn't say CO2. You had to say
carbon dioxide.
Thank you.
Someone said this in the chat room earlier.
Yeah.
We become Mars.
Is that good? I don't think that's good, is it?
I don't want to
I don't want to become Mars. Anyway, so we've had a long time at Wackadoodle News. Thank you, gentlemen, for the comments.
Yeah, we took a whack at it.
Yes, we did. I get the pun. All right, Brady, you've been stewing. Let's hear it.
Yeah, I've got a couple of topics that are very similar we've been talking about, but I want to start with a really difficult science question, and bonus points to whoever can answer it correctly first. Doug and Alan, what causes earthquakes?
Tectonic plates shifting.
Alan, is he correct?
Well, if it isn't my neighbor yelling at her husband, then yes.
Well, once upon a time, I would have agreed with you, but because I pay attention to the news, apparently we were all wrong about that.
Oh, no.
Yep. And I've got it from official sources here that is not the case.
And the official sources are?
Well, we'll start with NBC New York.
Oh, gee, the best of the best.
You should be able to see this right now.
Okay.
The No Brain Company, right?
Exactly. Can you see this headline? It says, can climate change make the rare Northeast earthquakes more common? Experts weigh in. So apparently there was a 4.8 magnitude earthquake in New Jersey just the other day. I talked to a couple people in New York and New Jersey near me, and they were just freaking out. Being from Southern California.
That's a nothing quake, by the way,
Exactly.
says the Californian.
Yeah, we're all from Southern California. We're like, I don't even get out of bed for 4.8. But yeah, I did talk to one guy, a buddy who's got a pretty big show out of New York. He goes, "Now I was driving, I didn't even feel it." That's pretty much the case. But NBC,
It's got to get to 6 before I get concerned.
NBC News says you should be concerned. But the funny part about this is Dr. Park, one of the people quoted in this, says, indicated the continuous rise in sea levels can increase the amount of pressure exerted on the Earth's shelves and coastlines, resulting in mostly scattered and infrequent quakes with long lead times. So they're saying the melting polar ice caps are going to put more pressure on the tectonic plates, which is a one continuous system. And it is some of the biggest garbage I've ever heard. But I would not settle for a single source.
Wait a minute. Can I ask a question?
You may.
Okay. Now, apparently we've been doing this global warming climate change since the 90s. And of course, sea levels are rising. Oh my. The last thing I saw on the Arctic was that it had more ice than in the last 15 years.
I think I showed you that. Yeah, I showed you that graph last week.
So can sea levels rise when the ice in the Arctic are increasing? That doesn't seem right.
Let's see if Doug gets the trivia question right. Nobody gets this one right, Doug. Which weighs more, a molecule of ice or a molecule of water?
That's like asking, does my compressor weight? Is it heavier if I have condensed air in it?
Yeah. Well, H2O is a molecule. Does it weigh more in its liquid phase, its frozen phase?
I would say no.
You're going to say it doesn't weigh more in one or the other?
No.
Well, you're the first person who's got that correct in 2 weeks. I've been asking for it. Yeah, because they all have their same atomic weight. The nucleus, the electron, and the proton don't change. Well done, Doug. Everyone else has gotten that. Everyone else has gotten that wrong. Some pretty smart people have gotten that one wrong, but well done.
Yeah.
Alan, are you done? I'm going to move on to my next slide.
Oh yeah, move on, please.
Well, we need more than one source if we're going to make a claim like climate change is going to cause earthquakes, don't we?
Can I say something real quick about New Jersey, real quick, just because?
Is it going to be polite?
There is a major fault line under New Jersey. It's called the Ramapo Fault, which stems from the Appalachian Mountains. Just saying. Okay, go ahead.
Well, back to New Jersey. We have a certain candidate for Senate that Doug mentioned earlier who weighs in on the subject and says it's not the fault's fault, it's the climate crisis. This woman is named Christina Amira Khalil, is running for Senate. He says, I experienced my first earthquake in New Jersey. We never get earthquakes. The climate crisis is real. Weirdest experience ever. I highly, highly encourage everybody who's got a Twitter/X account to go look up this @Christina4 New Jersey and read through her entire timeline. This is the dumbest human being I have encountered all year. It is every single thing that she spouts is straight out of, it's got to be Reddit, the worst corners of Reddit.
That's almost as good as that Guam might tip over.
Well, yeah, but I've got just one more thing to share on this subject, which is very similar to Guam tipping over. And I just can't do this topic without playing this. And I need you to indulge me for about 30 seconds.
No worries. No worries.
You all remember the Haiti earthquake back in the day, not too long ago. Clintons went down there and did all kinds of shenanigans. Well, well-known climate scientist Danny Glover, also known as an actor, decided to weigh in on the subject. And so now we have official I mean, this is the trifecta of experts. So I am just going to play this for you and hear what Danny has to say on the subject.
Hope we see this
Can you hear that?
Yes.
particular moment, because the threat of what happened to Haiti is a threat that can happen anywhere in the Caribbean to these island nations. You know, they're all in peril because of global warming. They're all in peril because of climate change and all of this. And we need to find this. When we did what we did at the climate summit in Copenhagen, this is the response. This is what happens. You know what I'm saying? But we have to act now.
So I rest my case that it is not tectonic plate shifting that causes earthquakes. It is actually carbon.
Okay.
Well,
So now let me show you something real quick.
oh, go right ahead.
So there you go. There's the fault lines in New Jersey. You notice actually, we don't just have a fault line. You have one that branches off into two of them and another one by itself. So really, there's really three fault lines in northern New Jersey.
But Doug,
Where was the earthquake? Do we know?
yeah, pretty much right where the fault, the big fault line is.
Okay.
Yeah, they said you could feel it as far north as Boston, which is about an hour and a half south of me. I felt nothing. But Doug, how could that be? How could this be correct and it's a fault line when I've got three impeccable sources saying the opposite?
I don't know what to say. I guess there's something wrong with the fault lines. Well, maybe science isn't accurate on something. You know what? I know who's accurate on science. Let's talk to the biologist about it.
Well, I mean, that lady who was trying to become Supreme Court justice, who identifies as a woman but can't identify what a woman is because she's not a biologist. That one,
Right? Yeah. Yeah.
and she's going to weigh in on the heaviest cases in the country.
Hmm.
Okay,
Yeah.
Well, I got another fun climate myth for us to debunk real quick.
please.
So we've all heard that one of the reasons we've got to sacrifice our livelihoods, way of life, and our economies is, of course, we've got to protect those most disadvantaged by climate change, meaning the people who live on these islands around the archipelagos of the world, right?
Okay.
Well, it turns out that might, believe it or not, brace yourself, Alan.
I'm braced. I'm braced.
That may not necessarily be true. So it seems that the islands that climate alarmists said would soon disappear due to rising sea apparently have grown in size, despite the fact that the sea levels are marginally, incrementally higher than they were. And I'm going to throw a theory out there without reading the article that perhaps that these islands actually, there's more to their landmass than just the rise of the sea level. They might actually be able to increase the sediment that adds to their beaches and shores as the tides go in and out. Call me crazy.
Crazy.
Thank you.
The thing is that, okay, if we were worried about, hear me out for a moment. If we were worried about rising sea levels, because this is an absolute new phenomenon. It just began like in the 1990s or whatever, right? Well, then, okay, maybe we need to be concerned. When did sea levels start to rise in this current interglacial period? 14,000 years ago?
12,600 years.
When the sea level was down 400 feet? Why are there things in the Mediterranean? These are stone structures, buildings, monuments, whatever. They're underwater quite significantly. Did our planetary ancestors have the unique ability and desire to build things underwater, or have the sea levels been rising for a very long time?
They apparently drove too many fossil fuel run vehicles.
Going to their jobs at the coal-fired power plants.
Exactly.
Okay. So the problem I have with some of these narratives, like pushing CO2, when they don't really explain why 421 parts per million is so massive, why 1.9 parts per million of methane is so massive. we have to stop raising cattle and eating red meat. But then they talk about sea levels rising, and they don't put it in the context of we're in an interglacial period, 12, 14,000 years. And when it started, the sea levels were down 400 feet because the ice on top of the Arctic in Canada was 2 miles thick. Put it in the full context and understand that there are other things other than CO2. So it's, and when the under minimum, which was just an absolutely freezing period between 1645 and 1715, when that ended, why? Did all of a sudden everybody start driving their cars and producing CO2? Or maybe something was going on with the sun. Maybe Mama Earth's tilt increased. So thank you for bringing that up, Brady. Appreciate it.
Alan, if I may bring this subject home on a more serious note.
Yes, please.
We ridicule some of this junk science as we should, but it needs to be pointed out, and it's very important because this is a real world problem. And I bring up my final headline. The Strasbourg court could rule that governments have to protect people from climate change. This is the European Court of Human Rights, and they could rule that governments have to protect us from climate change. They're getting ready to make a ruling that basically allows this European Court of Human Rights to overrule your sovereign governments throughout Europe, and they're going to try to push this to the United Nations as well, that your government has an obligation to protect you from man, bear, pig here. And this has some serious implications for us because it's basically given them another mandate to take away all of our rights and push this nonsense down our throats. This is problematic, and it's coming. This case will be decided very soon.
I think this is wonderful because until somebody or a group overplay, thank you for sharing that. It's amazing, Brady. Until somebody actually really overplays their hand, then it just keeps going and going. This is a huge overplay. And I briefly looked at the article as you were scrolling, and somebody from the UK is talking about leaving that thing, that group.
Yep.
The other is that forget CO2 for a moment. Let's talk methane. 1.9 parts per million. If you round it up to 2 parts per million, that's 2/10,000ths of 1%. Excuse me. Let's talk about why that is so massive and so massively impactful on our climate or weather. Let's hone down the questions for these people and get them to answer them. And then, of course, with that court, I'm sorry, who gave you authority to tell us in the U.S. what to do? No one. No one gave you that power. And if you think you were given the power, it's not constitutional, which means it's unlawful, illegal, go away, shut up. Go ahead, Brady.
Yeah, part of the article that you caught was Sarah Dines, the former Home Office Minister, who's called for the UK to leave the Strasbourg court. She described it as yet another attempted ideological power grab on the part of a self-selecting and self-serving elite out of touch with reality. That's well said. The last sentence I'll read is, the legal challenge is based on the claim that failure to tackle climate change sufficiently to protect the public amounts to a breach of Article 2, the right to life, and Article 8, the right to a family life, which is written apparently into the European Union's Bill of Rights. And the contrast between that Bill of Rights and ours is so striking, I pass the baton to Doug to have some fun with it.
Well, its Bill of Rights is what government is must give you, protect, and guarantee, as opposed to natural rights given to you by God, which, by the way, I've heard that now God-given rights, by saying God-given rights, the idea that God gave you your rights, that is proof that you're a Christian nationalist, I was told recently by one of my sister-in-laws. But I did want to comment on somebody, two people in the chat room.
Please do.
Yeah, please. Thank you. So 2020 Liberty says they were born in Atlantis. Chances are they mean Atlantis, Florida. It really is a city.
I was going to go with Atlanta, Georgia, but okay.
But my favorite comment in the chat room of late was Q Team Rocks. All the countries got to nuke the sun at the same time, bring humanity together. We'll show that ball of plasma who's the boss.
Okay, first of all,
I love that comment. That's awesome.
You can send whatever you want towards the sun. It won't get there. Okay? It will not get there.
Yeah. David Glenn might disagree with you.
Really?
Yeah. Sci-fi writer.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm thinking about the amount of heat that thing generates. And when you close in, it will probably explode.
What about the miniature black holes we're creating at CERN, which is turning its engines back on tomorrow and right in time for an eclipse? Those mini black holes could probably get there if they could actually last more than a second.
And if you nuke the sun, what is the upside for Earth?
Well, no more.
According to the CERN, when it comes to the CERN black holes, that's something they've been doing for a while, according to certain people who have escaped employment from the Hadron Super Collider. But these black holes at this point have never gotten bigger than microscopic, from what I'm understanding. That said, according to certain people who are very nervous about what's going on, they're trying to open the gates of hell just in time for the eclipse.
Yes, I've heard that. And Alan, you've been debunked by 2020 Liberty.
Okay.
They'll land the nukes on the sun at nighttime. Duh. Think about it.
There you go.
Okay. And who was this from? Who's this from?
2020 Liberty. You know, one from Atlantis.
Wait a minute. 2020 Liberty. Way to go. I think that's brilliant, except for one thing. It's never nighttime on the sun.
Oh, I'm going to have to get a flat earther on here to debunk that.
Okay, we're not talking Earth. We're talking sun. Yeah. Sun is round. The whole thing is lit. There's no dark. Now, see, if you're talking about hitting the dark side of the moon, okay, fine. But there is no dark side of the sun. But 2020, thank you. That was brilliant.
Alan, how do you know there's no dark side of the sun? Have you ever been on the other side?
I'm really glad you asked.
The answer is yes, once a year. I see the whole thing.
No, see, I do something, and I started this many, many years ago. I'm very accomplished in astral projection, which means though my body is laying in bed, my spirit is everywhere. I've walked on the moon. I've cruised around the sun. So, yeah, there you go.
Speaking of darkness, how many politicians does it take to screw in a light bulb? None. They want to keep you in the dark.
Well, you have to pay them.
All right. Somebody take us home to something a little bit more intelligent in the direction we're going.
Oh, that was so fun. But anyway.
See, you start talking about what the left believes, and it literally dumbs you down. You just get stupid.
Speaking of that.
Wait, real quick. 2020 Liberty.
Hurry up before we lose whatever's left of our brains.
He's not a flat earther. He's a flat sunner. We're going to have to.
Okay. Wait a minute. You got to ask 2020. Okay. Flat sunner. I like it. Which
2020 Liberty, you're on a roll. You are on a roll.
Which side is dark, top or bottom? And if
the left side.
And if it's flat, why does it look round in the sky? Just help me out.
Yeah, the left side is dark.
So think about it like a frisbee that's hovering over you, Alan. What you have to do is you have to fly up above the frisbee.
Yeah. Okay.
Remnant.
You keep that.
Remnant answered
Keep that
my
going.
joke with a
Keep-
different one.
Keep going that. Dougie, you had something on, and thank you, 2020.
Yeah, I just want to say Remnant answered my joke with another one.
Yeah.
So the politicians actually treat us like mushrooms. They keep us in the dark and feed us shit.
There you go. Yeah,
That's pretty good.
The dark side of the sun is called the black hole. We don't want to see it.
Okay. Anyway, we're going to move on from nonsense. I mean, this makes wackadoodle look intelligent. Let's move on to Dougie's got a thing. He wants to talk about it. And I'm thinking it's a conspiracy.
Well, you know, and I did actually write an article about this, and we talked about it on Constitution Radio yesterday on KMET 1490 AM. Did I say that correctly, Alan?
No, you did not. Constitution
if you want to
Radio.
correct me, go ahead.
Constitution Radio, Saturdays, 1 to 3 p.m. West Coast time on KMET 1490 AM. And I say AM because it stands for America. That's how you say it properly.
All right, so have you noticed all of the charges against Donald Trump? Have you paid attention to the 91 indictments? Has it occurred to any of you that none of the accusations are actually directly linked to any actual crimes? Nearly all of the charges are conspiracy charges. He's charged with a conspiracy to change an election, a conspiracy to obstruct an official proceeding, a conspiracy to defraud the United States, a conspiracy to commit insurrection, all these different conspiracies. None of the chargers actually say that he actually committed any of the actions he's accused of what he planned, I guess, to commit. In other words, what they're saying is he's guilty of his words.
Can I interject one thing just to bring this for the audience? A definition of conspiracy is that a conspiracy exists when two or more persons, not one, two or more persons join together, form an agreement to violate the law, and then act on that agreement. So to be a conspiracy, there's got to be two people. And to be a conspiracy, you have to have a specific law that's being violated. And then to be a conspiracy, the actions to violate that law have to take place. That's a conspiracy.
Even in that kind of conspiracy, there has to be some type of action towards the criminality.
Exactly.
This conspiracy, the conspiracies against Trump, remind me of the definition given to us by American lawyer Clarence Seward Darrow. I bet Mr. Warhamster has a lot of knowledge about Clarence Seward Darrow. But anyway, explaining the
trial?
I'm sorry.
Would that be Scope's monkey trial?
Yeah, it would be him. Yes, I had a feeling you would know. Explain now. He gave us a definition of what a conspiracy is to really explain the absurdity of what conspiracy prosecutions really are. And here's what he said: a boy steals a piece of candy. He is guilty of a misdemeanor. But if two boys talk about stealing candy and do not, well, they're guilty of a conspiracy, which is a felony. I mean, that's how absurd it is. And that's that's basically what they're doing to Trump. The presence of a crime being committed, evidence showing that it was committed, their witnesses, things like that. This is a part of the American system of justice. We recognize in our system that things like the Minority Report is not good. Thought crimes like 1984, not good. There has to be a crime committed. There needs to be a party that was injured, and so on and so forth, which is what standing is all about. All right. So without evidence, without injury to another party, without the actual breaking of an existing law, there is no crime. If there is no crime, there is no evidence, there is no case. Unless, of course, your name is Trump. Then there's a case. Because you don't have to commit the crime. You just have to say something that was interpreted as meaning that you might want to commit a crime, which is basically what he's been charged with. He's been charged with conspiracy to commit crimes. Conspiracy He's essentially guilty of saying things that may be interpreted by some people that he may possibly do something possibly in the future that might be considered a crime. And, conspiracy to do something is generally not a crime unless, as with committing a crime, there is hard evidence showing that the conspiracy existed and actions were taken to commit the crime the conspiracy is regarding. None of that exists when it comes to Trump. These conspiracy charges were simply a way to get him into the courts because they didn't have any evidence. They didn't have anything to go on. So they hit him with conspiracy charges just so they could get him into the court system, so they could disrupt his election. They could maybe destroy him, take his things legally or illegally, depends on who you're talking to, seize his properties. And interesting that all these conspiracy charges suddenly appeared during an election year, hoping that it'll turn voters off. Or maybe if they do it right, they use the system properly, with the proper leftist judges, they might somehow land him in jail, or if they can't get him behind bars, at least take his money or destroy his business world or take his properties, which they hope might neutralize him and his influence. And then they're hoping, after he is being charged with conspiracy to commit this, conspiracy to commit that, even though evidence is irrelevant to these people, they're hoping that all these accusations, which has nothing to do with the truth, the law, justice, or fairness, they're hoping that it runs Trump enough to where you might just go, well, gosh, he's messed up. I don't want to vote for him. So here's the thing now. If they were confident that they could steal it like they did in 2020, would they necessarily be doing all these things? This tells me that they're not fully confident. They know this is right now the most anticipated, most impressive, most supported president candidate for the presidency in history. Getting back to conspiracy. So conspiracy to commit a crime is not actually committing a crime. But hey, who cares if you destroy the man in the process? Truth is not their desire. It is stopping him from having another 4 years of a presidency. They are charging Trump with crimes that he might commit if he's given the chance. George Orwell couldn't even imagine it this much. The idea of Big Brother seeking out thought crimes. This goes beyond what Orwell described. Orwell's ideas and his imagination had nothing on what's going on right now. This attempt to achieve Orwellian Big Brother control or Philip K. Dick pre-crime Minority Report conditions, this is nothing new. Of course, usually it happens during wartime. And I bet also Mr. Warhamster's familiar with this. In 1968, there was a prosecution and trial of American pediatrician and anti-war activist Benjamin Spock. Spock and 4 others were charged with conspiring to aid, abet, and counsel draft resistors. That is, they were charged with saying things that might make a person hearing their words consider resisting the draft. Prosecutors were never able to show that the conspirators charged in the case actually committed any illegal acts, much less were even in the same room together. Still, Spock and 3 of his co-conspirators were found guilty in federal court. Now they appealed, and Spock was supposed to go to jail for 2 years, go to federal prison for 2 years, but there was some legal technicalities, and they never served the time, and the case was cast aside in 1969 by a federal court. But the federal legal doctrines underlying conspiracy charges remained in place, despite the fogginess of the evidence and the fact that the case never actually put the conspirators behind bars. Jessica Mitford in 1969 wrote a book regarding the trial of Dr. Spock. This is what it says in her book. The law of conspiracy is so irrational, its implications so far removed from ordinary human experience or modes of thought that, like the theory of relativity, it escapes just beyond the boundaries of the mind. One can dimly understand it while an expert is explaining it, but minutes later, it is not easy to tell it back. This elusive quality of conspiracy as a legal concept contributes to its deadliness as a prosecutor's tool and compounds the difficulties of defending against it. So why is it so absurd? Conspiracy is based on words, speech, and thought. You know, the very concepts enumerated in the First Amendment of the United States Constitution, a clause that begins with the words, Congress shall make no law. If Congress shall make no law regarding speech, words, thoughts, opinions, then no laws must exist at the federal level. No laws may be acted upon at the federal level, and no court may apply such law because they are not supposed to, because the law doesn't exist in the first place. Innocent until proven guilty means something has to have happened in the first place for guilt to be proven. A charge must have enough evidence of a crime committed to result in a conviction of a crime that was actually committed. Thinking about it, talking about it does not a crime make. Activities to treat one's words and thoughts as a crime, and then to pursue legally a person for daring to commit such actions, such words, such thoughts, well, that's criminal in its own right. Such are the activities of tyrants. Tyrants are willing to do whatever it takes to silence their opponents and eliminate them. Conspiracy convictions are basically based on circumstantial evidence. The government owns the prosecutors and the judges in the case. However, when it comes to what's going on with Trump, so whether it's circumstantial or hearsay, it doesn't matter to them. Their rules are in play. Their way of going about it is in play. They are the government with all the resources, all they need to know. All they need is to keep throwing the case, all the evidence that doesn't matter at it to support their claim of conspiracy, whether any of it is connected to the allegations or not. It works well when related to those who protest or stand against government policies. It silences and destroys the target, and it fills everyone else with fear who might dare to protest or stand against government policies. And it's a great way to circumvent the First Amendment.
Thank you very much. Yeah, we're out of time. Brady, promote yourself.
Everybody knows where to find me. Warhamster at Rumble.
Thank you. Here on Sundays, 5 to 7, FedEd, FEDED.us, and Doug at DouglasVGibbs.com.
That's all I need to say, DouglasVGibbs.com.
There you go. Well, gentlemen, I want to thank you for being on the program. Thank you for all the words of wisdom. I appreciate it. See, the Cath is here. And I am going to close with Alan Myers here. This has been another episode of For the Republic. To all you good people out there, you lovers and defenders of liberty, freedom, rights, individuality, equality of opportunity for all. To all you patriots out there, yeah, you know you are. Till next time, may you be and stay safe and well. Patriot out.